Hello, my friends. It is day 107, and we're reading 1 Samuel 25 through 1 Samuel 27. And before we get into today's recap, I want to thank you for taking a moment to check out this video. Hopefully, you're finding the yearly Bible reading program to be a blessing and to be helpful throughout your day-to-day studies. And if you have not yet accepted the invitation, it's not too late. You can check out the yearly Bible reading program by checking out the description box below. Clicking that link, it'll take you directly to the YouVersion Bible app, and there you'll find a link that will help you connect with the readers that are reading all across the country and leaving feedback every single day on the things they're learning. So we'd love for you to be a part of the journey, and we hope you will find everything there helpful and useful in your studies each and every day. So today we're reading and continuing our read in the book of 1 Samuel, and we're discovering the things that are transpiring between the lives of Saul and David. And this is very important because we're seeing the evolution of a new kingdom that God is organizing in order to bring about his son, Jesus Christ. Ultimately, we have to keep all of these things in mind, that everything we're reading is to get us to Jesus Christ. And it's incredibly interesting to see how God uses the lives of individuals who are just doing everyday things similar to what we would do, and somehow or another it all leads to a magnificent gift for the world, for humankind, for all creation. And so we're reading a beautiful story, but it can sometimes get lost in the small details of individual lives like that of Saul and David. But it all has a purpose, and it all leads to a bigger point. Now, chapter 25, we see, it's just interesting to see how this all is described. There's literally one verse, almost a half of a verse, describing the death of Samuel, who was one of Israel's greatest leaders, definitely one of the greatest judges, and a great prophet. And so we're going to see from this point on, what is it like for the kingdom to not have a prophet that is warning them in the way that Samuel did of their national woes, right? Now we will see as the kings come along that there will be other prophets, but it's going to be a while between let's see, this point where Saul is ending his reign to the point where we get to the split of Solomon. We're not going to really have that prophetic voice in the way that we have now. There are going to be some prophets, of course, but Samuel is the voice, right? He's like he's the prophet for the nation. We'll have some others that will be prophets to David, but this is a major loss. And if it were not for the mindset of David, perhaps the nation would have fallen apart sooner than it did. But we see in chapter 25 this interaction with Nabal, or Nabal, as I think one translation pronounces it. And this figure is depicted as being very proud, very arrogant. David, of course, is in need of some assistance in the form of having some provisions for his army, if you will, and Nabal, he refuses to provide it. And I love in verse 13, his response whenever Nabal denies his request for bread and water. And his response, David's response, is, "Get your swords." Like, he's ready to go at it, right? And in my version, the New Living Translation states that he says this while, catch this phrase, while strapping his own, right? But while strapping his own sword, he's saying, "Get your swords, let's go. We're about to go take this out, or take this gentleman out." And so they start over, and as they are going, ironically, Abigail, who's the wife of Nabal, interrupts them and intercedes on their behalf to stop the apparent slaughter that is on the way. Ironically, it works, and whenever Nabal sobers up from a drunken night, he learns of how David was on his way to slaughter him, and then he suffers a stroke, is paralyzed, and then smitten by God, and he dies. After that, of course, David marries Abigail, and then off they are into the sunlight or in the moonlight, if you will. But the thing that's so interesting about this, what I took away from this is the fact that when David would have killed Nabal, God intervened in a way that prevented him from having perhaps blood on his hands. And obviously, David's biggest, one of David's biggest sin, obviously, or sins, was being so quick to harm people. I mean, he had blood on his hand. Not only did he have blood on his hand just from being in war, but he would have innocent blood on his hand. And so he didn't mind fighting, didn't mind doing those sorts of things. But in this situation, God intervened and prevented him from doing this. And um, he actually made reference of this, kind of praising and thanking God um, for not having to slaughter Nabal in this way. In fact, this is what he says in verse 39. Praise the Lord who has avenged the insult I received from Nabal and has kept me from doing it myself. Nabal has received the punishment for his sin. And I thought that was just an interesting point, because sometimes we need to strive to be able to say that, right? Because would he have been just? Perhaps, perhaps not. Perhaps there are situations in our lives where we are just in carrying out some sort of vengeance, if you will. But the question is not so much whether or not it is our right, or whether or not we should or shouldn't do it. Perhaps the question is it our place? Like, is it God's desire that we carry out that particular act, or does he desire to do it some other way? Even if what we are looking to do is just, the question is not a matter of justice, it's a matter um, of whose responsibility is it to carry out such justice, right? And so you can see there that David was really, he was really thankful for that, and I think that should be something we all aspire towards. Okay, so then as we continue to read, we see that David again is met by Saul, or rather, he meets Saul, and again he spares his life. He does not cause him any harm. Saul does what he always does. Oh, David, you're more righteous than I am. Blessings on you, if you will. But then he continues to pursue him, right? And so we see that whole situation in chapter 26, and then in chapter 27, we find that David is again uh, fighting and interacting with the Philistines, which again will be an ongoing. Um, it's going to be an ongoing conflict throughout David's David's reign. Eventually, he will overcome them, but it's still, they're definitely a stumbling block. Um, and so we have all of this going on, and we're continuing our journey through the life of David and the life of, I would say, the development of the nation of Israel as they become this vibrant nation. Now, we're reaching the end of Saul's life here, and we're going to finally see the nation come together under the reign of David, and that's going to be an interesting thing to behold as well. But let's keep reading. I have a lot to discover, a lot to understand. I would love to hear what you're learning, what you're gathering from each day of reading. You can leave it in the comment box below, or you can head over to the YouVersion Bible app and leave it there for others to interact and see what you're learning and discovering. But let's continue to pursue the knowledge of Jesus Christ as we read each word each day. We want to understand, how do we get to Jesus, and how do we apply what we're reading in everyday terms. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. Until next time, take care. God bless. Remember, live by the word.